Hey, welcome to the Backyard Professor Chess videos. I found a game, a Grandmaster game by Rotlevi versus Rubinstein in 1907 that gives us a beautiful illustration of the idea of finding weaknesses in your opponent's position while improving our position. This is beautiful. Rubinstein is playing the black. Rotlevi is in the white. He opens d4, d5, knight f3, and e6. So it's a queen pawn opening. e3 and c5. He's going to bump up the extra c pawn to give him extra space so he can maneuver on the queen side easier. That's actually a fairly standard response to this kind of opening. And then there's the other pawn here. Rubinstein ignores the pawn, pulls his knight to c6. Rotlevi brings his knight out to c3, and now Rubinstein brings his other knight. So we have all four knights involved in this central argument for who is going to dominate the center. It's a beautiful symmetrical game at this point, yes? D will take the c pawn, and the bishop will then take the c pawn. So we have a further development here. They both bump their a pawn, a3, a6. Now Rotlevi hits a target, the bishop. So he's pushing the bishop back, which he comes back to d6. And then he'll fianchetto his bishop, trying to influence the long diagonal across the board here. So they're speedily putting all of their might into this game, which is one of the things that makes this such a terrific game. Rubinstein castles relatively early, which is always a good sign. Queen comes to d2. With this opening, with the queen pawn, the queen is better at c2 or e2. d2, she's just wasting time. She's going to have to move again. And that will give Rubinstein the initiative. That will give him the extra control. He bumps his queen to e7, directly across from the king, notice. That's always a good thing to do if you can. Rooks across from kings and queens, well, the same principle. Queens across from the kings, yeah? Always a good thing. Bishop comes to d3. Good development. D finally does take the c pawn, hitting a target, the bishop. And the bishop will simply take the pawn, take c4. And now it's Rubinstein's turn to hit the target bishop and bump the bishop back. So the bishop does come back to d3. They're both fairly evenly matched on the queen side. They're both fairly evenly matched in the center. This is actually a somewhat symmetrical game, isn't it? So far, that is. Yeah, so this is getting interesting. The bishop bumped back, and now Rubinstein's rook is the first to find the file directly across from the lovely lady. Yes. And that's enough of a file to get the queen to waste a move moving away. See, she should have just come here in the first place. So, in essence, this gives Rubinstein an extra move, more or less. And man, does he take advantage of it. He will also fianchetto his bishop coming all the way across the board this direction. And now Rotlevi, I'm not sure how to pronounce his name, he castles. And Rubinstein begins a series of moves that culminates in a wonderful, wonderful game. Target consciousness. You'll notice The guardian of the king is the knight, and that is the target. He also forks the bishop. Target consciousness. Well, the knight does take the knight, and the bishop takes the knight because of the way he targeted the various defenders of the white king. The white king's area is looking a little less secure. Yes? This bishop is really strong. All he has to do is pop a queen here, and he's got a pawn. So Rotlevi pushes the f4 pawn to chase away the bishop. It works. He bumps back down to c7, but looking at the position, both those bishops have a very wonderful sweep toward this king side. Yes, the queen can jump into here real quick. The rook has the open file, hitting targets, hitting targets, hitting targets. Yeah, that's really important to see. The setup for Rubinstein's pieces appear more coordinated, and therefore we would say his position is stronger. His position is better for an attack on the king. Again, a very common theme in so many of the Grandmaster games. The Grandmasters. These are the guys we expect to know better. But I want you to make an observation, a key. From here over, how many of white's pieces do you count? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. From here over, how many do you count near his king? 1. How many times have we seen this theme? And you know the results. So let's look at them. But they're based on attacking targets. It's not an accident, and it doesn't just naturally evolve. No, Rubinstein puts together the attack through attacking the targets. And this is beautifully illustrated here. I really like how this shows this. E4. Now, Rotlevi he has a mobile pawn center, and don't kid yourself, Rotlevi is trying to hit targets as well. He wants the initiative. No one ever wants to just be blown off the board and lose the initiative, right? That's not the way to play chess. However, Rubinstein is 1 to 2 jumps ahead of him, and now he gets his other rook onto the other file. Rubinstein's rooks are on the files. Rotlevi's rooks are not. That is a critical fundamental difference in this game. Let's keep watching. He continues. He hits the target, certainly. E5, he's got a mobile pawn center. He is gaining space. But watch what happens. First, the intermediate move, bishop b6 check. So the king goes to the corner. And now he will address his problem with his knight. It looked good, didn't it? You know, this mobile pawn center can be a great weapon if your pieces are coordinated with it. Yes, he's got the rook here. Yes, he's got the queen back and the knight. But it fizzled. Watch Rubinstein's attack, which just picks up steam from here. Very remarkable how he pieces this together. Bishop comes to e4, challenging the bishop because this bishop was target conscious, hitting the king, yeah? Well, this bishop is target conscious, hitting the pawn, which would make a great fork on a king and a rook, yeah. And the targets that black has are more vital than the targets white has been hitting. Until he moved his bishop here. That's a real important target for white to want to hit. Yeah? But who has more targets? Who has more guns focused? Black, clearly. His big guns are focused in the proper place, the files. The bishops dominate the diagonals, the rooks dominate the files. That's the difference between a stronger position than a less coordinated, less developed system. We're seeing that in action. It's wonderful to see that and to be able to recognize what is it that gives the black position so much oomph, right? We can see the difference. Really. Very interesting. So, while the bishop did, well, he's defending, and he is hitting this target. Notice, this bishop just has the queen defending him, but he is definitely becoming a target, yeah? So, does he swap the bishop? No. No, he comes to queen h4. Man, not only do the bishops have those two united diagonals, so does the queen. The knight is hitting the h2. The queen comes up to hit the h2. White is in trouble because the targets are more vital that black is hitting than the ones white has been hitting. G3, pretty much about the only defense, yeah? So, on G3, Rubinstein can bring the queen back away from that and still have an attack. By pushing the G3 pawn hitting the queen, he does open up so that the queen has a say in the protection of this really important pawn. So Rubinstein can bring his queen back and now try to bring in more forces, but that's not what he does. He ignores the attack on his queen. In this instance, he really does have a better move. Yeah? Sometimes you just can't ignore the threats, right? But he's on an attack. He's on a multi-layered attack. The two rooks, the two bishops, the knight, and the queen. That's multi-directional, multi-layered. And here is why he doesn't worry about the queen, because he has a target. Blam. Right there. Coming through with the rook. Target consciousness really improving his attack position here. And you say, well, wait a minute. The bishop could just take the rook. Well, wait a second minute. The pawn could also take the queen. What? You're telling me black is playing stronger when his most vital pieces are under attack? That's exactly what I'm telling you. Yes, the pawn does take the queen. He ignored the queen, so he deserves to lose her. Yeah? Yeah? Now the rook uses the file, and unbelievably powerfully takes over the 7th rank, directly targeting everything on that 7th rank. Pure power, hit the target move right there. Sensational. The queen gonna let him get away with that? Not on your life. No, take that insolent rook, that saucy little rook. He is gone. He is out of here. The problem is, black has established his position with so many different multiple targets that were vital that doesn't hurt him. Because now he takes the bishop, target consciousness, check. The only move that is available for white at this point is blocking that check here, because the king cannot go to here. He's got the bishop covering this diagonal. Remarkable, isn't it? He's got this bishop covering this diagonal. The bishop pair is absolutely overwhelming here, so he can block the check. Now, do you get the queen? Yes, you do. Truly, the queen is yours. However, there is a stronger move, and Rubinstein found it, because of the target consciousness of the most vital areas, of the most vital weaknesses, and to improve his attack position, his rook comes to h3. And here is where Rotlevi resigned, because there is nothing that can prevent the rook to h2 checkmate. And therefore, the game is over. The queen can't take the rook, because the queen is pinned by the bishop. So the next, whatever white does, I mean, he can go to here, it's okay. He can go to there, it doesn't matter. He's going to checkmate him. Because then the queen takes this, and the bishop takes this. Then the queen moves over. Well, now that's interesting. What did I miss? I missed something here. That wasn't a checkmate. The book might have been wrong, unless, of course, I'm missing something here. I probably am. I haven't taken a lot of time to analyze this, but in any case, this situation is deadly for white. Well, now he's out of it, though. Wow. So there's your chess game. The fundamental thing about this that I enjoyed is that the target theme and the lesson this game showed was the more vital targets are the more important targets. Like I've said in other chess videos, targets are a dime a dozen in a game of chess. The more we practice, the more our ability becomes fine-tuned to get to the best targets. So there's your chess video. You guys be good, be nice, be kind. Remember, drink a lot more water than you're normally doing. It's good for our brains so that we can study our chess better. We all can use a lot of that, right? And in the meantime, have a good night rest, and I will see you in the next Backyard Professor Chess video. All right, I found my error. I knew I would. It had to be wrong. I said at this point, there's nothing to prevent rook from h2, so I went ahead and said, yeah, take it. Or no, it's white's move. What if white goes here? And I said that was irrelevant. the book says there's nothing to prevent rook h2 checkmate. And so that's what I said. But there is if that rook's there, and that's what I showed, and that's where I got confused, right? That's not the way Rubinstein would have played this. It's the way I looked at it real quick at the blink of an eye, and I was wrong. Rubinstein would have taken the rook. If you put the rook there, he'll simply take the rook with the bishop. That maintains the pin on the queen. And from this point, there's nothing to stop the checkmate. The rook can come to, what, f1? Well, I mean, even if the bishop comes to here to open up this, the bishop just simply takes the bishop. It still keeps that square closed. And then if after that point, I mean, you're desperate at this point, if he tries to come here and take it, now the rook takes it. So I did it a little skitty-wampus the first time, but the second time it worked out. By looking at it slowly and carefully instead of quickly to wrap up the video, that's how Rubinstein would have done it. So it's a great game nonetheless. Thanks for watching, you guys. I will see you in the next chess video.